In the heart of Chicago, on a chilly October night in 2017, a young woman named Clara was settling into her new high-rise apartment. She loved the view. The city sprawled out beneath her, a glittering tapestry of lights and life. Her favorite part was the large picture window in her living room. It was like a living painting, changing with the hours. At night, it transformed into a dark mirror, reflecting her and her cozy apartment against the backdrop of the distant city glow. Every evening, before heading to bed, Clara had a little ritual. She'd stand before the window, take a final look at the sleeping city, and wave at her own reflection. It was a silly, comforting gesture, a way to say goodnight to herself and the world outside. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. The reflection waved back, a perfect mirror image of her movements. The city lights twinkled, cars moved like silent fireflies below, and all was peaceful. But then, something shifted. It was subtle at first. A flicker in the reflection that didn't match her own. One night, as she raised her hand to wave, she noticed a split-second delay in the reflection's movement. She blinked, shaking her head. "I must be tired," she mumbled, dismissing it as a trick of the light, a product of a long day and an overactive imagination. She went to bed, but a seed of unease had been planted. The next night, she paid closer attention. She stood perfectly still, watching her reflection. The room was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city. As she watched, she was sure she saw the reflection's head tilt slightly to the side, even though she hadn't moved a muscle. A cold dread washed over her. Was she losing her mind? Was the stress of her new job getting to her? She tried to rationalize it. It had to be a strange optical illusion, a weird property of the glass, maybe a distortion from the streetlights below. But the feeling wouldn't go away. The window, once a source of comfort, now felt watchful. She started to feel like she wasn't alone in her own living room. The reflection felt less like a mirror and more like an observer, a silent entity standing just on the other side of the glass, mimicking her, studying her. The delay became more noticeable. The subtle, independent movements became more frequent. Sometimes, when she turned away from the window, she'd catch a glimpse of the reflection staying in place for a moment longer, its gaze seemingly following her as she left the room. Her anxiety grew with each passing night. She tried to avoid the living room after dark, opting to read in her bedroom instead. But curiosity is a powerful, nagging force. She couldn't stay away. She had to know if what she was seeing was real. The unease began to bleed into her daily life. She felt watched during the day, constantly looking over her shoulder on the busy Chicago streets. Every reflection in a shop window or a puddle on the sidewalk made her heart leap into her throat. Frustrated and scared, Clara decided she needed proof. She needed to know if she was going crazy or if something genuinely terrifying was happening. She bought a small high-definition security camera and positioned it on a bookshelf, aimed directly at the picture window. She set it to record all night. She thought, "This will settle it. The camera will show me the truth. It'll just be me, my reflection, nothing more." That night, she performed her ritual, waving at the reflection, her heart pounding. The reflection waved back, still slightly out of sync. She then forced herself to go to bed, though sleep was a distant luxury. The next morning, with trembling hands, she transferred the footage from the camera to her laptop. She fast-forwarded through the hours of darkness, the city lights twinkling in the background. Then she stopped. Her blood ran cold. The footage was clear, chillingly clear. It showed her standing in front of the window. But it also showed something else. Behind her reflection, deep within the glass, was a second figure. It was a faint, shadowy silhouette, almost imperceptible at first glance. But as she watched, she could see it moving. When she raised her hand to wave, this shadow figure mimicked her, its movements a ghostly echo of her own. When she turned to leave the room, the shadow remained for a beat longer, its form slowly dissolving back into the darkness of the reflected apartment. It was inside the room with her, or, at least, inside the reflection of the room. It had been there all along, hiding in the dark, a parasitic twin attached to her own image. The video played on 4 hours after she went to bed. The shadow would occasionally materialize in the window. It would pace back and forth in the reflection of her empty living room. It would stand where she had stood, seemingly staring out at the city, or perhaps staring back into the room. Clara felt a wave of nausea. This thing wasn't just in the window. It felt like it was in her apartment, an unseen roommate whose only evidence of existence was in the glass. She spent the day in a haze of terror. She called the building management, but what could she say? "There's a ghost in my window that only shows up on camera." They'd think she was insane. She considered moving, but the thought of leaving this thing behind for someone else was almost as terrifying as staying. She had to face it. That night, armed with the terrible knowledge of what she was dealing with, she approached the window again. She felt a strange mix of fear and defiance. The camera was recording once more. She stood before the glass, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She looked at her reflection, and she could almost feel the presence of the other, the shadow lurking just behind her image. But this time, something was different. The reflection was perfectly still. It wasn't mirroring her at all. It was just an image of her, frozen. The city lights behind it continued to twinkle, but her own mirrored self was static, like a photograph. And then, slowly, the reflection smiled. It was not her smile. It was a wide, grotesque, and predatory grin that stretched unnaturally across the face in the glass. Her own face remained a mask of terror. The smiling reflection raised its hand, not to wave, but to press its palm flat against the glass from the other side, the gesture both intimate and threatening. Clara stumbled back, a scream caught in her throat. She fled the living room, slammed her bedroom door shut, and huddled in the corner, shaking uncontrollably for the rest of the night. She didn't sleep. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sounded like it was coming for her. The first rays of dawn finally crept through her bedroom window. Exhausted but determined to leave, to get away from that apartment forever, she packed a single bag. She had to pass the living room to get to the front door. She took a deep breath and forced herself to walk, keeping her eyes fixed on the exit, refusing to look at the window. But she couldn't resist one final, fleeting glance. She stopped. The window was just a window again. It showed the bright morning sky, the buildings of Chicago bathed in sunlight. There was no reflection. The sun was at an angle where she should have seen herself, a faint outline against the cityscape. But there was nothing. It was as if the glass had become a perfect, one-way pane. Hesitantly, she took a step closer. She raised a shaky hand, expecting to see its twin rise in the glass. But the window remained empty of her image. It was just glass. For a moment, a wave of relief washed over her. It was over. The nightmare was gone with the daylight. Then she waved, and from the other side of the glass, a pale, shadowy hand waved back. Clara finally screamed. She ran out of the apartment, out of the building, and into the busy morning streets of Chicago, not once looking back. She never returned. The apartment remained vacant for months. Future tenants would often complain about a strange chill in the living room and the unsettling feeling of being watched. "Some windows, you see," don't just reflect what's in front of them. Sometimes they hold on to things they remember, and sometimes what they remember is watching you back. Thanks for tuning in to our story tonight. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more tales that will make you think twice about turning off the lights. Stay safe out there, and always be careful what you see in the reflection. We'll see you in the next one.